The House of Representatives passed a budget resolution that both declared Congress their intent to cut spending, nearly $2 trillion, in order to extend the 2017 tax cuts enacted in the first Trump administration, which are essential to the economy and its future growth. Now, this resolution is not the final budget, but it lays out a framework for the way forward in making the Republican agenda of the 2024 election a reality. So what comes next? Joining me now to discuss this, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who represents the 4th Congressional District of Louisiana. Mr. Speaker, welcome to This Week on Capitol Hill.
Hey, Tony, glad to be with you as always. And this was a big week on Capitol Hill. You know, passing that budget resolution was a huge step forward. The media, the Democrats, they all decried the effort. They mocked us. They said it couldn't be done. I actually issued a prayer request the day before the vote that there was a series of articles mocking me for that. But you know what? God parted the Red Sea once again, and we got the resolution done against all odds. And that was a critical, important first step. As you said, it sets up the framework for budget reconciliation. And just by way of quick review for all of our viewers and listeners, the reconciliation process is a very important mechanism in Congress because it is the only way to get around what is always normally required, a 60-vote threshold in the Senate to break filibuster, right? So you have to have 7 Democrats, because right now we have 53 Republicans in the Senate. You would need 7 Democrats to come along on something. So the reconciliation process allows us to do big priorities for our party and the president's priorities that he thinks he promised on the campaign trail with only 51 votes in the Senate. And we think this is a way to check a lot of the boxes of everything that we can do to get the country back again, really, to make America great again.
Well, Mr. Speaker, certainly congratulations are in order. It was a tall order to pass this big, beautiful bill, but you got it across the line. And as we've talked about, it's just the beginnings. But the following day, after passing that, you met in the White House with the president and with the Senate Majority Leader John Thune. What can you tell us about that meeting?
Yes, spent a couple hours in the White House on the following day, and Leader Thune was there, Vice President Vance, Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff, and a number of other the policy folks, and a very helpful meeting with the president. We talked about all of these developments and the strategy and where we're going from here. And I think that the headline coming out of these meetings, Tony, is that this is a very exciting moment for the country, for the White House, for the Congress, because there is no daylight between the president, the Republican majority in the Senate, and the Republican majority in the House. We are all working in lockstep on a united mission, and that is to deliver on this America First agenda. And we will. And I think these relationships are critically important. The president is open and engaged. We're meeting regularly. I talk to him multiple times every day now. We're working in tandem. And I think that's really important because we have a very aggressive, very ambitious legislative agenda. Why? Because the last team made a disaster of every metric of public policy. We literally have to fix everything. And so we have a big plan to do that. We have a short timetable in which to do it. And we also have, at least in the House, the smallest margin in U.S. history. Like we have 1 vote margin now. So it can all be done, but we have to it's got to be a well-oiled machine, if that makes sense. And so that's why we're spending so much time on the discussions. Another meeting that followed that most people haven't reported on is that I brought in the chairman of our Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith, and the chairman of the companion committee in the Senate, the Finance Committee, Senator Crapo, the chair there. They came in and we and Leader Thune and I, we met with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and Kevin Hassett with the National Economic Council, and talking about the tax package and the big components that are going to be part of reconciliation. You mentioned that tax cut, extending the Trump tax cuts, is so critical. Tony, everybody needs to realize if we don't get this mission accomplished, if we don't pass this one big, beautiful bill in reconciliation, what will it mean? It will mean that almost every American, the average household will have a 22% increase in their federal tax, okay? If we don't do it, it means 26 million small businesses in this country, their tax rates will go up overnight at the end of this year to 43.4%. That would be their federal income tax rate. We can't do that. It'd be the largest tax increase in U.S. history. We must complete this mission.
Debt, taxes, or cuts? What's it going to be?
Yeah, sorry for that sound there. We're in the speaker's office, so we get all the sound effects from the House. Listen, Democrats, as you noted before the break, Tony, Democrats always want to raise taxes. We want to reduce taxes. Why? Because We believe that that sparks economic growth and allows people to keep more of their hard-earned money, and they can spend it more efficiently and effectively than bureaucrats can. So that's a general guiding principle. It's our true north for the Republican Party. And we understand that the way to get rid of the federal debt and to get our deficits under control is to reduce spending. So we're in a very exciting moment in U.S. history right now, Tony. Why? Because there's so many new dynamics that we're being able to use right now that haven't been in place before. One of them is the DOGE effort. For all of the ways that Elon Musk has been maligned in this, and the Democrats running around with their hair on fire, what he is doing is very important. And we've talked about it before, but Elon is going through using algorithms, going through all of the books and the data and the software of the federal government, of the deep state, of the bureaucracy, to find these incredibly egregious examples of fraud, waste, and abuse. And Elon announced this past week, as you saw, he stood up in the cabinet meeting at the White House, and he and I have talked about this personally. I met with him in his office late on, I think it was Wednesday night, 10 to 11:30. We sat there and talked about all this. Elon believes that he can find $1 trillion in savings of taxpayer dollars for this year, Tony, in just fraud, waste, and abuse across the federal programs. It's an incredible thing. It's going to change the way we do the math, change the way we do federal, balancing of the budget. And you heard the president use those terms this week. He said we should get to a balanced budget. And we all said, hallelujah, that's what we should do. That's what we need to do. That's what our families have to do. That's what many state legislatures, state governments have to do. We should do it at the federal level as well. And we're on track. If all of this comes together with new sources of revenue, with the elimination of fraud, waste, and abuse, Tony, it's possible that we can get this federal budget back to balance within a 10-year window. And that will be an incredibly important, responsible thing to do for the future of our country and our children and our grandchildren.
The essential element of that is going to be what you and I have talked about many times, is the role of statesmen. And not politicians, but statesmen, those that will do what is in the best interest of the country, not what is in their own political best interest, short term. Because there's going to be a lot of pressure not to cut these programs that have been in existence, that a lot of them created since COVID. And so there's going to be a lot of prayer needed that we'll have leaders that will step up and follow your lead and make these essential cuts.
Well, that's right. Look, there's a spiritual component to all this. By the way, the founders, the framers of the Constitution, our previous generations of leaders fully understood that. That's that they would routinely call the nation to prayer. They themselves would take a knee and get down and bow before our Heavenly Father and ask for divine guidance, because they knew the challenges were larger than them, any of them individually or even collectively. We are one nation under God. And as Reagan always used to remind us, if we ever forget that, we'll be a nation gone under. I believe that. It guides me every day, and I'm grateful for that, because we need divine guidance right now. So yeah, it's an ongoing prayer request, Tony, that we can accomplish this mission. I'm convinced after the last election cycle, you and I have talked about this many times, it was a crossroads for the country, a civilizational moment, and I'm convinced that God's given America another chance. We have a special blessing, and I think we're going to fulfill that.
Well, there was some good news coming outside of D.C. this week. Obviously, good news from D.C. with the focus on cuts, balancing budget, stewardship. But these political reforms, if they're going to have staying power, they need a foundation. And Pew Research, issuing one of their major reports that only comes out every few years, showing that there seems to be, possibly, a religious stirring in this country among Christians, that we might be seeing the first moves of possibly revival, which I think are going to be needed to build a foundation for these reforms to stay.
Yeah, I saw that study yesterday, and I texted it to you because it's an exciting thing. It affirms what we've talked about and felt we sort of know intuitively, that there is kind of a spiritual revival of sorts going on. People are recognizing the need. The sales of Bibles, Tony, is one metric I was looking at a couple of weeks ago, are at their highest rate in over 40 years, I think is the number. There is a real urgency for people to want to know about eternal things and eternal truth. And I think when challenges are great, it makes people turn that way. It's a great development for the country. We are a religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being. That's a language from the Supreme Court 70 or 80 years ago. That's in the fabric of our DNA, our deep religious history and heritage and tradition here. We do well to keep it, because it's one of the things that makes America who we are.
Well, as I see this administration being very clear about protecting the free exercise of religion, this is the time for Christians to be bold in their faith, share their faith so that we might experience that spiritual awakening and revival, which is essential for America to be great again. We just have 2 minutes left, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask you about something the president has put on the table. He's always thinking outside the box. I commend him for that. But sometimes it's hard to put all the pieces together. Rare earth minerals, this discussion with Ukraine, as a possible way of the U.S. recouping the money that we have given to Ukraine in this battle, in their war with Russia.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept. I talked with the president about it a couple of times this week, and the idea would be that we'd enter into an agreement with Ukraine that has a wealth of these rare earth minerals that we desperately need in America, and that we would have some sort of sharing agreement. Maybe we get 50% of whatever is mined there in exchange for what we've invested there. I think it'd be a great thing for both countries. It would involve America in Ukraine, and that would be not necessarily a guarantee of national security, but it would certainly prevent enemies like Russia from invading again if they knew they would be hitting Americans potentially. So it could be a win-win-win for both countries, and I commend the president for thinking outside the box as he does. He thinks of this as from a businessman's perspective so often, and that's a really refreshing change for how government is normally run.
Yeah, I think Ukraine should think long and hard about that, because there will be an unstated interest in the durability of Ukraine. I mean, you look back historically in our involvement in the Middle East, obviously with our business interest in the oil, the petrochemical industry, we've been protective and helped hold off some of the hostile forces there in the Middle East. So could be a win-win for the U.S. and for Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, congratulations on a full and productive week on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, brother. Great to talk to you. God bless.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.